Okay, welcome back. So I've added a few lines here. So I do believe that I've added from here onwards down to the bottom, and I will explain each and every one of them. And in the app component TS, a few lines have been added here. So from here onward, so from here to here, this belongs to the app component. And then we have the interface user. All of this will be explained immediately. So I think I shall make the tutorials like this from now on. We'll see the code and then I'll explain it line by line as opposed to typing. Please feel free to give me a feedback whether you prefer this or the other method of me actually typing the code as I explain it. But I think like this I'll make fewer errors, as it is quite difficult to actually type and explain at the same time. So the class app component has been explained previously, and here we see the properties of this app component. So first of all, this here is private. So you have this is a username variable of type string. So its name is username and the type is string. And the value of this string is test. I don't know. This is something stupid that I'm doing here. I'm creating a username and password. Obviously, it wouldn't go this way. I will show you later on more advanced things, but for now we're going to do very basic things, and then we're going to move on to making a real-world application. But first I want you to master the basics, so that's why I'm doing these stupid examples so that you can learn through them. Anyway, so we have a private variable here. It says whose the name of the variable is username, the type is string, and it's private. Private meaning that it cannot be accessed outside of this class. And then we have yet another private one. It says current user, and this one is of type user. Now, variable current user of custom type user that we will define down below. Actually, it is defined down below. I'll explain that shortly. But this variable basically will contain objects with properties. So properties will be our username and email. And this must match the interface scheme down below. So you have username and email. This username is of type string and email is of type string. So the properties must match. Otherwise, it will not work. And it absolutely has to have two of them as they are here. It cannot have one or the other. It has to have two as they are defined down below. And they both have to be strings. So as you can see, username is test and email is test@test.com. So they absolutely have to be placed in a way that they have been defined in the interface down below. Basically, let's just go ahead and explain the interface and then I'll explain the method here. So interfaces are basically similar to classes and they only define types, which means that we only list properties, their types, and prototyped functions here. Well, when I say function or method, it's the same thing basically. You call a function a method when you put a function in a class. So when you put a function into a class, then it's a method, but basically it's the same thing. Don't worry about that. So as I said, interfaces are similar to classes, except we only define types here. We do not assign any values to them. We give a name and then we give a type. We give a name and then we give a type. So this is of type string. We cannot assign any values to it here, and we can also prototype methods within interfaces as well. So our interface is user, and current user will be of type user, which is defined here, but it is not yet, the values are yet to be initialized, so to say. So here we actually put them and we initialize them to whatever we want as long as it's a string, because it says username, string of type string, and username has to be a string here. It absolutely has to. And email string and email has to be a string here as well. That is a must-have. Okay, So this method here, so this is a method that does not take any parameters. So as you can see, the space between parentheses is empty, so it does not take any parameters, and its return type is string. So it will return a string. In fact, it has to return a string, since we've stated that the return type is string. This keyword, keyword this, marks the current instance of the class. Current user here means that we are accessing current user property. So current user here, and we are pulling from it a username property. So we're pulling this. So from the current instance of this, we are pulling this. This is what this line here represents. So I have my mouthful of the word "this" here. But anyway, this is just referring to the current instance of the class. If you have minimal to no understanding in regard to classes, you can look up classes in any programming language. The concept is fairly similar, but you do not need to understand these complexities just yet. As we move on slowly through this course, a lot of these things will be explained as well. But for the time being, this is all you need to know. So this will basically, this entire line is here to pull the username. Actually, it will just print out tests. Actually, the return value will be the string test, which is the initialized value of username. Now, how do we present this? Now we've written all of this. How is this presented to a user when they load up a web page? Well, that is why we have a template. So appcomponent.html. We can go here, and as you can see, a good amount of lines have been added here. So you have the first line where we're doing something strange here, and then we're moving onwards, doing a lot more of these strange things. If I just, this is actually running. As you can see, the npm start has been called, and this development server is running. So if I just open up Mozilla Firefox, and if I localhost :3000, this is the result of this along with this. So what is it that we are doing here? What is going on? So you have these things written out. Anyway, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So these are paragraph tags, usually some sort of, well, you can put pretty much whatever you want into a paragraph, but I've placed hello and comma, and then I've used this. This is called interpolation. Whenever you use these double curly brackets or single curly brackets with percentage sign or something like that, this is called interpolation. Basically, what's going on is that we are going, the username in this case, so this thing inside the curly braces, in this case, is a property from a class app component. So you have the HTML, CS, yep. So this is you have app component class, and then you have a username property here. And if you go back to the HTML, username is a property of a class, app component. Since this file is a template from this component, together they make one whole. So we can actually access private things from this class. We can access all the private things from this class without any problems. Now, how is appcomponent.html a template for this? Well, simple enough. It says add component, and it says a template URL, and we have specified the path to our template, which will correspond to this class and to pretty much anything that is in here. Therefore, that makes up one whole, and therefore you can access private properties and private methods and whatever is private within that class without any problems. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to access them at all, as they are invisible outside of that class to anything that's not one whole with that class, so to say. So let's go ahead and take a look at the website and see what this prints out. It says hello test. Okay, so it says here hello comma, username. The username is test, and then I've placed an exclamation mark at the end for, well, God knows what reason. So hello test. And the exclamation mark is also printed out onto the screen. Next up, we have, well, this is a header, so you can just, why is this here? Didn't refresh it, or I didn't load it, or something like that. Let me just go ahead and delete this because this is not relevant at this point in time, and just save this as it is. You see, it's immediately loading once I've actually saved it, so now it has been reloaded. That was actually an old layout, but it doesn't matter. It's old, only the lines below are different. So it's still hello test, and this is just an ordinary HTML paragraph, etc. This is just being printed out onto the screen. If I just go ahead and let me go ahead and resize this. Give me a second here. No, I do not wish to resize it in that fashion. I wish to do this, so that you can monitor in parallel what is going on the site and what is actually, oh my God, come on, friend, work with me here, work with me. So that you can actually monitor what is going on in the HTML code and what is going on the site as well. So we went over this one. Now down below, I just wanted to show you that you can access multiple properties from a class without any problems as well. So it says here current user dot username. This will pull the username out of current user. So it will pull test, and the other one will pull the email. So this is how you pull them. You say current user, and then you go into email, and then you pull the email out of it. And what we get here, so this is not a minus sign. This is just the dash. And so we're not actually subtracting anything from anything else. It just says hello test, and then dash test@test.com, so the email address. Down below, it's pretty much the same thing here, except this is just a different way of writing the same thing. So two different ways of writing exactly the same thing. This here, current username, and then we concatenate this string, and we concatenate this string, and then we put it all in one string, and then we print it out. But the way of accessing properties from a class remains exactly the same. And the final, well, not the final, but this one is just demo that you can also not only access properties, but you can also call methods here. And what will be written here instead of the method will be the return value of that particular method. So if we go into the app component, you can see that the return value here is a string, which is basically just the value of the username property. As you can see, it just says hello, and then it calls a method, and basically what happens is just says hello test. Test is the return value of the method get username. And down below we have made a small input field whose initial value, so this is the initial value of the input field, will be the return value of the get username method, and the return value of the get username method is just basically just the username that we've typed in, which is test. So we will populate this field by default with the return value of the get username method. What will we be typing into this input field? Well, the type will be text. So no big deal here. Once again, these curly brackets are called interpolation. If you wish to learn more about it, that is the term that you should look up on the net so that you can read more about it. Anyway, bid you farewell here, and hope to see you in the follow-up tutorial.